Kia ora te whānau, welcome to the conference, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share our story with you, which isn't a story with a long history actually. We've had a really great on-farm sustainability program called Lead with Pride, which I'm sure some of you would have heard of for the past 5 or 6 years, but our holistic view of sustainability only really came about 18 months ago. We're calling that our pivot, and this came about when our founder, John Penno, was reflecting upon his first 10 years in our business, and he was thinking about what the next 10 years might look like. And he figured, being a very rational scientific guy, that sustainability was going to play a big role in our future. And that comes from 3 imperatives. And the first imperative is that, without doubt, we have had a significant negative impact upon the environment which we operate, particularly in Canterbury. The second is that we have positive and negative impacts on social sustainability in our communities. And thirdly, and really importantly, we have lots of our customers, our big multinational global customers, saying they will buy more from us and pay us more for it if we do better on sustainability. So those 3 imperatives together have led to a real step change in the way we think at Synlait. So we're taking a stand because we deeply care about the land upon which we stand, and we deeply care about the people in our communities, our employees and our customers, and all of the people and communities that we touch in running our businesses. So we've built a strategy for sustainability framework, and at the centre of that is our purpose. So we have this statement which sits at the centre of all of what we do, and it's sort of broken into 2 parts. The first part is doing milk differently. We were born disruptive. We're only a 10-year-old processing business and an 18-year-old farming business, but we've always done things a little bit differently. So that is the spirit of our organisation that sits within us, and it's really driven our success to date. And the second part of that statement is for a healthier world. And what that means to us is healthier people by means of the milk nutrition we serve to millions of people around the world, but also healthier people and healthier planet. So with that sitting at our centre, we work not uncommonly on the 3 main principles of sustainability. Environment, people, and what we call enterprise, which is economic sustainability. Perhaps where we're a little bit different is our appetite or our ambition for change across these 3 areas. And our ambition is to one day to be net positive for the planet. So that means restorative and regenerative agriculture, manufacturing and supply chain. Under people, that's all about creating opportunities for all to thrive, not just our employees, but the farmers that supply us, their communities. We really want to create a fan base which we hope will give us momentum to be able to further drive a transformation of our industry which will lead to a positive legacy for future generations. And on the enterprise front, we see ourselves as the 21st century milk nutrition company. As I mentioned, we were only born 10 years ago. We see ourselves as being similar to the likes of Airbnb and Uber and Tesla. We really want to do things differently. But what's really important to us is that our heart is in New Zealand. We deeply care about our people and our land, but our head is out there in the world. That is where we derive economic value, which we return to New Zealand. So how we're structured on our work in sustainability is across a number of what we call sustainable innovation platforms. And we have 6 of them live currently, 4 in the environmental area: climate change, circular economy, welfare, which incorporates 3 areas, which is animal welfare, biodiversity and soil, water, and in the economic area, we've got a big project underway on transparency, and in the people area, we've got a lot of work going on how we better engage with our communities. All of our work in these areas map to the UN SDGs, so we've chosen 6 of those that we think we can make a meaningful contribution towards. So environment, I want to go into a little bit of detail on two of those sustainable innovation platforms, climate change and water, because obviously that's the most salient topics for this group here. But before I do that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we talk to about sustainability to our people, to our farming community and to our own staff, because it's a little bit complicated and we try to break it down to make it as simple as possible. And this notion of ecological overshoot is what's getting real traction with our people. You've probably heard of this notion, and that is that for about the past 30 years, we've gone past the point where papatūānuku, where Mother Nature can sustain our behaviour, the way we're living on this planet. So by means of pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, deforesting, overfishing oceans, stripping soil, polluting waterways, that is not able to be regenerated naturally at the rate in which we're taking from her. That rate is currently about 1.7, so it takes papatūānuku more than a year and a half to restore what we've taken in 1 year. And that's a little bit like burning our own furniture to keep ourselves warm, isn't it? We can't do that for long. We've heard from speakers before talking about legacy, and we just can't leave a legacy of living in this sort of place of insanity. We only have one planet. We need to get back to living like we only have one planet. But it gets a little bit worse than 1.7. If everyone lived like a Kiwi, we'd need 3.2 planets to sustain our lifestyles. And if everyone lived like an American, we'd need closer to 5 planets to sustain our lifestyles. So at Synlait, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about how we can get back to living with sanity like we've got the one planet only. So that's really getting traction from our people, and it brings it all back to a really simple idea. So climate change. We are one of New Zealand's 10 worst polluters. We're about 912,000 tonnes of CO2e, which is about 1.1% of New Zealand's total footprint, which is terrifying and also a massive opportunity which we're grabbing hold of. So where does that come from? It's actually about 83% of our footprint is from on-farm, and the next biggest chunk is the coal that we burn in our factory in Dunsandel. We've got 3 coal boilers there of about 55 megawatts, which is the big chunk of our off-farm footprint, which you can see here. So it's about 70% of our off-farm footprint. About 20% comes from the freight we ship abroad, the finished product we ship abroad, and the ingredients that we import to make our products. And then the others are pretty obvious, probably pretty consistent with most businesses. Electricity is our third, transport's is our 4th biggest impact, and most of that is the diesel that we put in our tanker fleet to collect milk. So really interested to hear the conversation earlier about hydrogen, because that's a big opportunity. So we also look at this chart a lot, New Zealand's commitment under the Paris Agreement. That's also a little bit frightening. The steepness of that curve from this point forward is a pretty radical departure from the blue line that precedes it. So it is incumbent upon all of us to do our bit to help us get to that point in the future. And as 1.1% of New Zealand's total footprint, we feel really engaged in making a difference here. And when we model our the achievement of our targets over the next 10 years, you can actually see a little visible dent in that trajectory. So we're really committed to doing that, and we hope to inspire others to do the same. So on those reduction targets, we are targeting a 35% reduction on farm, which recall from that earlier slide is about 83% of our total footprint. We plan to do that by halving nitrous oxide emissions, reducing methane by 30%, and by reducing carbon dioxide by 30%. And I'm really interested in all of this discussion groups that I go to. Carbon dioxide is not really talked about much in the agricultural sector, and we think it should be. It's 15% of our on-farm footprint, and there's actually some really easy wins there to pull that back. And as we know, it's a stock gas, it's not a flow gas, so CO2 has some really big opportunities for us on-farm. That's an intensity target, note that. The manner in which we're going to go about achieving those targets is through this great program that we've got called Lead with Pride. And we're really proud of the fact that we've built a program which incentivises change. It doesn't punish people that are doing the wrong thing. So we offer our farmers incentives for making positive changes in the way that they look after the environment, their people, animals, and the quality of the milk that they supply. We've currently got about 62 of our 200 farmers Lead with Pride certified. By the beginning of next season, we're more likely to have closer to 90. So more and more of our farmers are picking up Lead with Pride, and we have an ambition, of course, to have them all independently verified under this program within the next few years. A really good example of one of the incentives that we run under Lead with Pride is our PKE free incentive, which we announced in June last year, where we offer 8 cents per kg of milk solids to farms that aren't using PKE. So a lot of our suppliers love that because they already weren't using PKE. So when we announced that, I think someone from Palmu came up to me and said, "Oh, that's a nice $600,000 check, thank you very much." And similar from Ngāi Tahu and other people that have a really firm view around PKE. And we figure with our view around sustainability, it is just incongruous for our people, our farmers, to be feeding PKE to animals given the degradation and the harm that that industry is causing abroad that we're supporting by importing that product. So Lead with Pride is a really effective mechanism for us, and we will continue to introduce new incentives to boost uptake for farmers to do the right thing. Off-farm, we've set ourselves a target of reducing by 50% within 10 years. You saw in that earlier pie chart that coal is a big part of our footprint. So just getting off coal easily delivers that. Not quite so easy to get off coal. It's a little bit like heroin for our industry, but we're doing our best to accelerate that. We've got a kind of number of stages through this. The first is that we announced last year that we're never going to build another coal-fired boiler. That just doesn't sit well with us. And we're working really hard to reduce the amount of coal that we're putting through those 55 megawatts of boilers. So we're investing in new technology, which we think could reduce the coal that we're burning by up to a third. So that's looking at high temperature heat pumps, at fan technology, and just being more efficient through our manufacturing process. We're also looking at co-firing with biomass. Unfortunately, there aren't many trees left in Canterbury, so that's getting a little bit tough, but we think we've got some viable looking opportunities to start co-firing with biomass. So we think, perhaps with all of these things adding up, just through efficiency, we're going to be able to reduce the volume of coal that we're burning to get the same volume of steam, maybe 40% within 10 years. But what we're really excited about is the electrification of our manufacturing system. And a couple of months ago, we turned on New Zealand's first large-scale electrode boiler. This is running our new liquid milk plant, which is supplying all of the milk for foodstuffs in the South Island. So that's a 6 megawatt boiler. It's just basically like a big kettle that sits on your bench in the kitchen. It has water in the bottom of it and these big electrode probes that are submersed in the water. They create an arc which rapidly heats that water up. We can go from cold water to steam in 5 minutes, whereas it takes something like 18 hours to get steam from a coal boiler. So it's really efficient, and it was surprisingly pretty much on parity when it came to capital investment versus another coal boiler. But it does cost about double to run versus coal. So we've taken a bit of a hit on the running cost, but the price of carbon only really needs to get to about $40 per tonne before this technology is on a price parity with coal. So we see the end near for coal, which we would be very happy about. So the big challenge for us has been getting the electrical infrastructure at scale into our site. Orion had to jump through hoops to be able to pull that off. We're running it at 6 megawatts currently. It's built for 12 megawatts. We need to generate a lot more, we need to build a lot more infrastructure to be able to turn it on to full capacity. And we're in talks with Transpower about how we might be able to get more like 100 megawatts into our site to be able to turn off all of those 55 megawatt boilers and transition into electro. This is the future, in our view, of process heat in New Zealand. Water. So we've got a reduction target on farm of minus 20%. We also have an N-loss target of 45%. Both of those targets are within 10 years. Similar for off-farm. And a really important one for us is to improve the quality of the wastewater from our factory, which we irrigate onto neighbouring farms. The inspiration for us here is the Toyota Prius factory in America that takes water from aquifers, uses it through their manufacturing system, puts it back into those aquifers cleaner than what it was that they brought out. So that's the aspiration that we're seeking to achieve. I just wanted to really quickly and finally talk about what we're doing on the enterprise front. This for us, this transparency area is really important for us. Primarily because we see our work in sustainability as pre-competitive. We think it's really important that the New Zealand industry raises its game because we're going to be coming under pressure from a discerning global audience to do so. So being transparent about what we're doing, sharing everything we're doing with our friends in the industry to be able to help improve their knowledge, and we of course can say we can learn a lot from our peers in the industry also, is a really important step for us. So we've signed up to this movement called B Corp, which is sweeping through Europe and North America. It's a way for us to benchmark our performance when it comes to accountability and transparency for our environmental and social performance. So the most famous B Corp in the world is Patagonia, the clothing company. Danone, one of our large European customers, is the biggest B Corp in the world. Unilever's Ben & Jerry's is another famous B Corp. When we get our certification, which we hope will be towards the middle of this year, we will be the biggest certified B Corp in the Southern Hemisphere. So this is a really important thing for us. We've also signed up to science-based targets, so we can have our targets ratified under that basis. And I mentioned that our targets are intensity targets, but we've modelled what they may look like in an absolute framework, and we're pretty confident that if we can hit these absolute targets, our intensity targets, our absolute target will be double-digit within 10 years. So that's it from me. If you can remember one thing from my talk, please think about how we might get back to a position of sanity where we live our lives, run our businesses, and run our country like we're running on one planet, not 1.7. Thank you.